I wish you had never been my daughter.
Then starting tonight, live like you never had one.
My name is Emily Whitmore. I'm 34 years old. I live in North Carolina, and I work as a regional director of operations for a logistics company. Most weeks, I work close to 60 hours. I manage people, budgets, deadlines, and expensive problems. At work, people call me calm under pressure. At home, my husband Daniel says I have a dangerous habit of carrying everyone else's problems as if they belong to me. For most of my adult life, that everyone meant my family. My father died 4 years ago, and after that my mother Diane seemed to collapse into helplessness. I stepped in automatically. I handled paperwork, organized repairs, and paid bills whenever she said she was short. I covered her mortgage, insurance, utilities, a new water heater, and even some of my brother Ryan's legal expenses during his divorce. I told myself this was what a good daughter did. What I didn't understand was that being useful had slowly become the price of being accepted. The day I finally understood that was Mother's Day. 3 months before the holiday, I reserved a private dining room at one of Charlotte's most expensive country clubs. I paid the deposit, chose the menu, and made sure everyone's dietary restrictions were covered. 12 of us sat around a long mahogany table under soft chandelier light. There were white flowers, crystal glasses, linen napkins, and enough expensive food to make the afternoon look like an advertisement for a perfect family. But my family was never perfect. My mother sat at the head of the table wearing the pearl necklace I had bought for her 60th birthday. She looked elegant and pleased with herself. I knew that expression. She wore it when she was preparing to say something cruel, while pretending she was only being honest. The comments started during the appetizers. She sighed about how some women still make time for family. Then she looked at me and said, "Of course, some people are married to their careers." I smiled and ignored it. The Daniel pressed his knee gently against mine beneath the table. It was our private signal. Don't take the bait. I had spent years learning how to survive family gatherings by swallowing one insult at a time. Then Uncle Robert raised his glass and gave a toast about my mother's strength since Dad died. Mom smiled. "It hasn't been easy," she said. "But family is everything. You sacrifice. You show up. That's what family means." Her eyes moved slowly down the table until they reached me. "It's just sad," she continued, "that not everyone understands that anymore. Ever since Emily married Daniel and got that big promotion, she barely remembers this family exists." My hand stopped beside my water glass. "No one spoke," she continued. "Everything is her job, her house, her schedule. Sometimes I wonder whether she even cares what happens to the rest of us." I looked around the table. Aunt Patricia stared at the flowers. Cousin Megan looked at her phone. Ryan watched the ice melt in his whiskey. Melissa looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Not one person mentioned that I had organized the brunch. Not one person mentioned that I was paying for it. And not one person mentioned that I had been paying my mother's mortgage since my father died. I finally asked, "What exactly would make me a good daughter, Mom?" My voice was quiet, but the entire room heard it. Mom leaned back. "Someone who puts family first. Someone who doesn't act like we're an inconvenience." Ryan finally looked up. "Emily, maybe this isn't the time." I almost laughed. Whenever my mother hurt me, it was never the right time to talk about it. But when she wanted an audience, every time was perfect. Mom placed one hand against her chest. "I sacrificed everything for you," she said. "I gave up my youth. I gave you everything." The old Emily would have apologized. But before I could say anything, she leaned forward and looked directly into my eyes. "If I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have had a daughter at all. I wish you had never been my daughter." The room became completely silent. For a few seconds, I couldn't feel my hands. It was like something inside me cracked open, but instead of pain pouring out, something colder took its place. Clarity. I had spent my entire life trying to earn love from a woman who had just announced, in front of our entire family, that she wished I didn't exist. Daniel reached for my wrist. He whispered. I shook my head. I wasn't going to cry or scream. I wasn't going to give my mother a scene she could later use as proof that I was dramatic or ungrateful. I placed my napkin on the table and stood. Then I looked straight at my mother. "You wish I had never been your daughter." Her expression changed. "Emily, don't be so sensitive." "I'm not being sensitive. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Starting right now, live as if you never had a daughter." Ryan scoffed. "Oh, stop it. Sit down. You're embarrassing, Mom." I turned to him. "You'll understand tomorrow." None of them knew what I meant. I picked up my purse and walked out. Daniel followed me after leaving cash for the tip. In the parking lot, He asked if I was okay. I looked back at the building where my family was still sitting around the table I had paid for. No, I said. But I think I'm finally done pretending that being treated badly is the same thing as being loved. That night, I blocked my mother, Ryan, Melissa, and Aunt Patricia. Then I opened my banking apps. One by one, I canceled every automatic payment connected to my mother's life. The mortgage, homeowner's insurance, car insurance, electricity, phone plan, streaming services, supplemental health coverage, everything. For the first time in years, I went to sleep without checking whether someone in my family needed money. But before I closed my eyes, I knew the peace wouldn't last. The next morning was Monday. It was also the first day of the month. And that was when my family was going to discover exactly how much of their independent life had actually been funded by the daughter they claimed they didn't need. At 6:14 the next morning, Daniel's phone began vibrating so hard against the nightstand that it sounded like an alarm. He rolled over, glanced at the screen, and immediately sat up. Emily. I opened one eye. What? He turned the phone toward me. 23 missed calls, several voicemails, messages from Ryan, Aunt Patricia, and 2 cousins. Daniel opened the newest text from Ryan. Call me now. Mom's mortgage payment didn't go through. Her insurance is disconnected from the account. What did Emily do? I stared at the ceiling for a moment. Then I smiled. Nothing went wrong, I said. The system worked exactly the way I wanted it to. Daniel looked at me. You canceled everything. Everything with my name or my money attached to it. He was quiet for a second. Then he nodded. Good. I got out of bed, made coffee, and went into my home office. At first, I only wanted to know how much I had been paying. I told myself that seeing the total would keep me from feeling guilty later. I downloaded 3 years of bank transactions and built a spreadsheet. Mortgage payments, utilities, repairs, medical premiums, phone bills, emergency transfers. When I totaled only the previous 12 months, I stared at the screen. The $31,842, more than $31,000 in 1 year. That number did not include the $80,000 roof repair, Ryan's legal fees, or the water heater I had replaced for Mom. I leaned back in my chair. Daniel walked in with his coffee. How bad is it? I pointed at the total. He whistled softly. But something still bothered me. Mom received my father's pension and Social Security. She always described herself as barely surviving. But now that I was looking at the actual numbers, her income should have covered most of her basic expenses. So where was her money going? Because I had helped manage her bills, I still had legitimate access to the joint account we had used for household payments. I filtered the transaction history. Then I saw the first transfer. First $200 sent to Ryan. The next month, another first $200. Then another. I scrolled faster. A fourth or $500 payment to a marina at Lake Norman. Ryan had bought a speedboat that same month. A $200 payment to a travel agency shortly before Ryan and Melissa went to Cabo. Several $600 payments to an American Express account I recognized as Ryan's. My stomach turned. Every month, I had been sending Mom money because she told me she was afraid of losing her house. And every month, she was turning around and sending a large part of her own available cash to my brother. I had not been supporting a struggling widow. I had been financing Ryan's lifestyle through my mother. Daniel read the transfers over my shoulder. So when he bragged that he bought the boat himself, part of it came from Mom. And Mom had the money because you were covering her bills. Exactly. The betrayal felt different from what happened at brunch. Her words had hurt me. This made me feel used. I had skipped vacations because I wanted to keep my savings healthy. Daniel and I had delayed renovations on our own house. I had worked weekends. I had accepted calls from Mom at midnight because she said she was worried about money. All that time, she had been handing cash to the son who rarely showed up unless he wanted something. My laptop chimed. A message appeared in the extended family group chat. Aunt Patricia had written that she could not believe I would abandon a grieving mother over a misunderstanding. Then the others joined in. Megan asked how I could cut off Mom's bank accounts. Melissa wrote that I cared more about money than family. Ryan demanded that I turn everything back on immediately. The most interesting part was what nobody mentioned. Nobody repeated what Mom had actually said to me. In their version, I had exploded for no reason. Daniel put his hands on my shoulders. You don't have to answer them. Oh, I'm gonna answer, I said, just not the way they expect. I took a screenshot of my spreadsheet showing the $31,842 I had paid for Mom during the previous year. Then I captured the transfers from Mom to Ryan. I highlighted the marina payment, the travel agency, the credit card payments. I removed anything unrelated to the issue and left enough information to make the pattern clear. Then I uploaded the images to the family chat. I wrote only a few sentences. I explained that my financial support had ended. Mom had enough income to survive, and the records showed that money was repeatedly being redirected to Ryan's boat, trips, and credit cards. If the family believed Mom needed more help, they were welcome to provide it themselves. Then I added one final line. Ryan, the mortgage is your problem now. I pressed send. For the next 2 minutes, I watched the little icons showing that relatives were reading. Then something remarkable happened. The family chat went completely silent. No insults, no demands, no one defending Ryan. The same people who had called me heartless suddenly had nothing to say. I closed the laptop. Daniel raised an eyebrow. That's it? That's it? You don't want to argue? I stood and picked up my office bag. No, the numbers can argue for me. I drove to work feeling lighter than I had in years. But by lunchtime, I learned that exposing the truth had not ended the fight. It had only changed the battlefield. Around 1 o'clock, I was in a glass conference room reviewing quarterly numbers with my team when I noticed movement in the lobby below. Ryan, he came through the revolving doors like he was entering a fight. His face was red, his shoulders were stiff, and he was arguing with security before he even reached the desk. A minute later, my phone rang. Ms. Whitmore. The guard said, "There's a man here claiming to be your brother. He says it's an emergency." I looked down at Ryan. He spotted me through the glass and pointed upward. "Send him to meeting room B," I said. "And please have someone escort him." When I entered the room, he was pacing. The door had barely closed before he shouted, "Are you out of your mind?" I sat down. He kept going. "You posted Mom's private financial information to the entire family. Uncle Robert called her a fraud. Patricia is furious. Everyone is talking about us." I folded my hands on the table. They were already talking about me. I corrected the story. "That money was Mom's. She can give it to whoever she wants." I nodded. "Correct." For a second, Ryan looked almost relieved, as if he thought I had finally agreed with him. Then I continued. "And my money is mine. I can give it to whoever I want. I no longer want to give it to her." His jaw tightened. "Mom can't afford that house without you. Then help her. I have children. You also have a boat." His eyes flashed. "Don't start with the boat. Sell it." He slammed both palms on the table. "You're destroying the family because your feelings got hurt." "No," I said. "I stopped financing people who disrespect me. Those are two different things." He called me selfish. He called me spiteful. Then, when none of that worked, his voice dropped. "Mom has options," he said. "You're not as powerful as you think." That sentence stayed with me after security escorted him out. Mom has options. It sounded less like reassurance and more like a threat. 2 hours later, Daniel called. His tone told me immediately that something was wrong. "I spoke to a friend who works with a title company," he said. "Ryan spent part of the morning at the bank." My stomach tightened. What was he doing? "He's trying to get your mother to sign a quitclaim deed." I went still. A quitclaim deed would transfer her ownership interest in the house. Why? Ryan told her he can solve the mortgage problem. His idea is that she signs the house over to him. Then he takes out a home equity loan, uses some of the cash to cover her expenses, and lets her stay there. I closed my office door. "How much equity is in the house?" "Roughly $400,000. That was the moment the entire plan became obvious. Ryan did not want to rescue Mom. He wanted control of the asset. The house was worth close to $500,000 and had a relatively small remaining mortgage. If Mom signed it over, Ryan could borrow against it. And once the debt was in place, she would be living in a home she no longer owned. If Ryan burned through the money, she could lose everything. "Did she sign?" I asked. "Not yet." She told him she wanted her own lawyer to review it. Apparently he became furious. I leaned against my desk. For years, Mom had treated Ryan like the golden child. She praised him for doing almost nothing. She excused his debt. She gave him money. She defended him whenever I questioned his behavior. And now, the first time she needed him to make a real sacrifice, he was trying to turn her panic into an opportunity. A part of me wanted to call her immediately. The old version of me would have. The old Emily would have raced in, found an attorney, stopped the transfer, paid the mortgage, organized the paperwork, and once again made sure nobody had to experience the consequences of their decisions. I picked up my phone. Then I put it back down. Daniel was quiet on the other end. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking she's an adult. She could lose the house." "I know. And Ryan is taking advantage of her." "I know that too." I looked out the window. "What I don't know," I said, "is whether saving her again would actually save her. Maybe the only thing that changes this family is letting everyone feel the weight I've been carrying." Daniel did not tell me what to do. That was one of the reasons I loved him. He only said, "Whatever boundary you choose, I'm with you." For the next 3 days, I heard almost nothing directly. The family group chat stayed quiet. Mom didn't call because she was blocked. Ryan didn't return to my office. But relatives began contacting Daniel, and eventually me through email. The story changed quickly. At first I had been the villain. Then the bank records appeared. Now people were asking careful questions. Aunt Patricia wrote, "I didn't realize how much you were paying." Uncle Robert said he was concerned about the situation with Ryan. No one offered a real apology. Not yet. But the family had finally discovered something I had known for years. Truth becomes much easier to understand when there are receipts attached to it. On Wednesday evening, the weather turned ugly. Rain hammered the windows, and Daniel and I were in the kitchen making dinner when the doorbell rang. He glanced at the security monitor. His expression changed. "It's your mother." For a few seconds, I didn't move. Then I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the front door. Mom stood on the porch without an umbrella. Her hair was soaked. Water ran down the shoulders of her coat. She wasn't wearing pearls or one of the expensive cardigans she liked to wear to lunch. She looked smaller than I remembered. In both hands, she held a manila folder against her chest. I opened the door but did not step aside. "Emily?" Her voice cracked. "What do you need?" She flinched. "I put the house on the market." I said nothing. "The realtor thinks it will sell quickly," she continued. "There's enough equity for me to buy a smaller townhome in cash and still have retirement money left." "That sounds reasonable." She stared at me, waiting for something more. I didn't give it. Finally she said, "Ryan won't speak to me." I felt a cold heaviness settle in my chest. What happened? Her eyes filled with tears. When I told him I wouldn't sign the deed, he said I was ruining his chance to protect the family. Then he said if I sold the house, I owed him half the money immediately. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. "He said it was his inheritance," she whispered. "When I told him I'm still alive and I need the money to live, he got angry." "How angry?" She looked away. "He said if I didn't give him what he deserved, I wouldn't see the grandchildren. He called me a burden. He said I was stupid with money. Then he blocked me." There it was, the final collapse of the fantasy. For years my mother had chosen Ryan because he made her feel needed and powerful. She gave him praise, money, excuses, and protection. The moment she became the person who needed something from him, he abandoned her. I should have felt satisfied. Part of me did, but another part looked at the soaked 70-year-old woman on my porch and saw something sadder than victory. Consequences. Mom lifted the folder. "These are the listing documents and some paperwork from the realtor. I want you to look at them." I stared at the folder. "You told everyone I didn't care about this family." "I know." "You told them I was selfish." "I know." "You told me you wished I had never been your daughter." Her face crumpled. "I know." A rain filled the silence between us. Then she said the words I had almost never heard from her. "I was wrong." I looked at her for a long time. "Why are you asking me?" "Because you understand this stuff. Because you've always understood it. And because I don't trust Ryan anymore." That answer hurt in a strange way. Even after everything, she still came to me because I was competent, useful, reliable. I realized I had a choice. I could punish her by refusing to help at all. Or I could help once, on my terms, without becoming her financial life support system again. I reached out and took the folder. "I'll read it." Relief flooded her face. "But listen carefully," I said. "I am not paying the mortgage. I'm not paying the realtor. I'm not funding the move. I'm not calling Ryan. I'm not repairing your relationship with him. I will review these documents and tell you if I see anything concerning. After that, you handle your own life." She nodded quickly. "Thank you. I'm serious? I know? No emergency loans. No automatic payments. No guilt calls. I understand." I looked at her soaked clothes. For 1 second, I almost invited her inside. Then I remembered the country club. Not because I wanted revenge, but because boundaries disappear when they are ignored the first time they become uncomfortable. "I'll call you after I read this," I said. She nodded again. "I know I don't deserve your help." For once, I did not rush to make her feel better. "No," I said quietly. "You don't." I closed the door. I expected guilt to crush me. It didn't. I carried the folder into the kitchen, dried it with a towel, and reviewed every page. There was nothing obviously dangerous in the listing agreement, but I wrote down several questions she should ask the realtor and told her to have an attorney review the closing documents before signing. That was all. No check. No rescue. No takeover. The next morning, I emailed her my notes. Her reply was only 2 words: "Thank you." Over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. Without my money, the family reorganized itself. Aunt Patricia helped Mom sort through decades of belongings. Uncle Robert drove her to meet with the realtor. A cousin helped her compare townhomes. The people who had watched me carry everything finally had to carry something themselves. And Ryan, he stayed away. He had wanted access, money, and control. When he realized Mom was no longer willing to provide those things, he disappeared almost completely. That was when I understood the most satisfying revenge was not destroying him. It was refusing to protect him from the truth about who he was. The house sold in less than a month. Mom bought a small 2-bedroom townhome in Greensboro with cash. After the mortgage and closing costs were paid, she still had enough money left to build a reasonable retirement cushion. For the first time in years, her life actually matched her income. I did not help her pack. I did not hire movers. I did not buy new furniture. I did not organize the utility transfers. Every time I felt the old reflex to step in, I reminded myself that helping was a choice, not an obligation. The Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert handled most of the physical move. They had both been embarrassed by what the bank records revealed, and I think helping Mom was partly their way of making up for how quickly they had judged me. Ryan never appeared. According to Patricia, he called Mom once before closing and demanded to know how much money she would have left after the sale. Mom refused to tell him. He hung up. That small act, her refusing to disclose the balance, was probably the first real financial boundary she had set with him in years. Fall came. Then Thanksgiving. Daniel and I went to the mountains instead of attending a big family gathering. We rented a cabin, cooked too much food, turned off our phones, and spent 2 days hiking and doing absolutely nothing for anyone else. It felt almost illegal. At Christmas, we went to New York. Mom sent us a simple card. No guilt, no complaint, no request for money, just a short note wishing us a peaceful holiday. I read it twice because I was waiting for the hidden demand. There wasn't one. In January, Aunt Patricia called me. At first, the conversation was painfully awkward. Then she said, "Emily, I owe you an apology." I sat down. She admitted she had believed Mom's version of the Mother's Day incident, without asking me what happened. She admitted that seeing the financial records forced her to realize how much I had been carrying. "I should have spoken up at that brunch," she said. "Yes," I replied. There was a long silence. I could almost hear her waiting for me to say it was okay. I didn't. Because forgiveness is not the same as pretending nothing happened. Eventually I said, "I appreciate the apology." That was enough. Through Patricia, I learned that Mom had started seeing a therapist. I was skeptical when I heard it. My mother had spent most of her life believing therapy was something other people needed. But month after month, Patricia mentioned small changes. Mom had built a budget. She had stopped sending Ryan money. She had joined a local gardening group. She was learning to use online banking herself instead of calling someone every time a number confused her. Most importantly, she was living without an audience. There was no large house to impress people, no daughter paying behind the scenes, no golden son arriving for cash. Just Diane alone with the life she had created. Meanwhile, my own life changed in quieter ways. I stopped apologizing for not answering family calls during work. I stopped paying bills I had never agreed to pay. Daniel and I redirected the money I had been sending to Mom into our own savings and travel fund. The first month I moved that $160 into our account instead of hers. I stared at the transfer confirmation. It felt selfish for about 3 seconds. Then it felt healthy. At work, I realized I was less exhausted. I had spent years believing my job was the main reason I was tired. It wasn't. The real exhaustion came from being permanently on call for adults who had learned that I would solve every crisis. Once I stopped, I discovered how much energy guilt had been stealing from me. By spring, I could think about Mother's Day without feeling sick. Then, 1 week before the holiday, my phone rang. Mom's name appeared on the screen. I had quietly unblocked her months earlier in case of an emergency, but she had not abused that access. I let it ring 3 times. Then I answered. "Hello. Hi, Emily." Her voice sounded different. Not weak, not dramatic, just careful. "I know I don't have the right to ask for much," she said, "but I was wondering if you and Daniel would come to Greensboro for lunch on Sunday." I looked out my office window. 1 year earlier, a Mother's Day meal had ended with me walking out of a country club and cutting off my entire family. Now she was inviting me to a small lunch in a townhome she had paid for herself. "Is Ryan coming?" I asked. "No." The answer was immediate. "We're still not close. He calls sometimes when he needs money." I tell him no. There was no pride in her voice. Just fact. "This would only be you, Daniel, and me," she said. "My treat." I almost smiled at those last two words. My treat. Such a small phrase. But from my mother, it meant more than she probably realized. I thought about the boundary I had built. It was still there. My finances were safe. My marriage was stronger. I no longer needed her approval. That was exactly why I felt able to see her again. Okay, I said. Send me the address and the time. She exhaled softly. Thank you. When I hung up, Daniel looked at me from across the room. You sure? I nodded. I'm not going there to get my old mother back. What are you going for? To see whether there's enough honesty left to build a new relationship. He smiled. That sounds like you. The following Sunday, we drove to Greensboro. I expected anxiety. Instead, as we pulled into the quiet neighborhood, I felt something else. Curiosity. For the first time in my life, I was about to meet my mother without needing anything from her. And without allowing her to need everything from me. Mom's townhome was nothing like the old house. It was smaller, quieter, and surprisingly warm. There were no expensive decorations arranged to impress visitors. No perfect dining room waiting for an audience. Just a small round table near a window, a few framed family photos, and the smell of roast chicken. She had cooked lunch herself. That alone felt unfamiliar. Halfway through the meal, Mom put down her fork. I need to talk about last year. I felt my shoulders tighten. She noticed. I'm not going to make excuses, she said quickly. So I waited. She told me her therapist had asked why she had wanted to humiliate me in front of the family. At first, I said I was angry because you were never around enough, she said. But that wasn't true. Her eyes dropped to her hands. The truth is, I was angry because you were capable. When your father died, I felt helpless. Then you stepped in and handled everything. Every bill you paid reminded me that I needed you. I stayed silent. I hated feeling dependent, she continued. Instead of admitting that, I punished you for it. Then she said something I never expected. And I gave Ryan money because he needed me. With him I felt powerful. With you, I felt exposed. The room was quiet. She looked directly at me. I used your money. I used your guilt. I let you carry responsibilities that were mine. And when you finally stopped letting me control you, I tried to hurt you in the cruelest way I could. A tear slid down her cheek. The daughter I said I wished I never had was the daughter who had done the most for me. A year earlier, those words might have broken me. I would have reached across the table, comforted her, forgiven everything, and probably offered to pay some bill before dessert. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I appreciate you saying it, I said. But we can't go back. I know. I will never be your financial safety net again. I know. If we have a relationship, it has to be honest. And no public humiliation, no guilt, no using money as proof of love. She nodded. I understand. Then I reached across the table and touched her hand. What can try to build something new? Her face crumpled into a small, relieved smile. I'd like that. When Daniel and I left later that afternoon, Mom stood on the porch and waved. I was opening the car door when she called my name. Emily? I turned. I'm glad you're my daughter. For most of my life, I had wanted to hear those exact words. But standing there, I realized I no longer needed them. My worth had stopped depending on my mother the moment I stopped paying for permission to belong. I'm glad you're my mother, I said. Then I smiled. Most days. She laughed, a real laugh. On the drive home, Daniel asked how I felt. I watched the road stretch ahead of us. The family was not repaired perfectly. Ryan and I were still estranged. Mom and I still had scars. Some relatives still avoided talking about what happened because the truth made them uncomfortable. But my life was mine again. I had my money, my marriage, my peace. And most importantly, I had boundaries that no longer disappeared when someone became angry. I feel free, I told him. Then I thought about the country club, the spreadsheet, the bank records, the threats, the rain, and the strange path that had brought us here. My revenge had not been screaming louder than my family. It had not been destroying Ryan or humiliating my mother. My revenge was removing myself as the source of money, labor, and emotional protection that allowed their behavior to continue. Once I stepped away, the truth did the rest. Mom had to face the son she had favored. Ryan had to face a world where my money was no longer quietly supporting him. The relatives who judged me had to face the evidence. And I had to face the hardest truth of all. Sometimes loving people means refusing to rescue them. If I had to summarize what happened, I would say this: I spent years believing sacrifice would earn me love. On one Mother's Day, my mother told me she wished I had never been her daughter. Instead of begging her to take it back, I accepted her words and stopped financing the family. That decision exposed a hidden pattern of money being passed to my brother, forced my mother to confront his motives, and finally gave me the distance I needed to rebuild my life on healthier terms. The biggest lesson I learned is that boundaries are not revenge, even when the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries call them cruel. Helping family can be generous, but help becomes unhealthy when it is demanded, hidden, manipulated, or used to purchase acceptance. You can care about someone without paying their bills. You can forgive someone without returning to the same relationship. And you can love your family while still choosing peace. I also learned that evidence matters. For years, everyone had an opinion about me because they only heard the version of the story that made me look selfish. One clear set of financial records changed the conversation. I didn't need to win every argument. I only needed to stop carrying a lie for other people. Most of all, I learned that self-respect can feel lonely at first. The first night after I walked away, I had no idea whether I was losing my family forever. But sometimes losing your old role is the only way to discover who you are without it. That Mother's Day, my mother tried to erase me with one sentence. Instead, she gave me permission to stop disappearing for everyone else. And that is the ending I will always remember. The day she said she wished she had never had a daughter was the day I finally became the woman who no longer needed anyone's permission to know her own worth. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my story. If this story made you think about family, money, boundaries, or the price of always being the responsible one, please share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional stories like this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.